Well, these are some of the issues that they raised, but this question of bailout, let's even explore that a little further. If they request bailout from the federal government, a bailout scheme of sorts, how should they approach it, and should the federal government respond, and how?
Well, the first question is, should there be a bailout? But if you want to have a bailout, there must be some sort of conditions attached to it. You must first of all restructure your debt. You must disclose, financial disclosure. Let people know how much debt you have, and then see how you can restructure it. And two, you cannot get a bailout because, one, it can create a dangerous precedent. Other governors in the future can say, okay, after all, the federal government will bail us out. Let's just go on a spending spree. So if there's going to be a bailout, there must be some sort of, disciplines, attached to it. I mean, you can see what is happening in other countries, even the developed countries or middle income. Take Greece, for example. They requested for bailout from the European Commission and the IMF, as well as the European Central Bank. And they impose certain harsh conditions: cut salaries, cut your pensions, do this and do that. And the austerity measures have been very, very nasty on the economy, and people are actually protesting.
But here, the ex-governors still have their very, very huge pensions and gratuity still going to them. Because many, if I remember properly, there was a report before the president was sworn in where he had said he was going to look into the pensions of ex-governors. But who knows if they will follow through on that one. But besides that point, wherein the governor of Edo State also talked about blocking some leakages, and then some governors say, well, in the first instance, if the government pays us what they owe us with some of the projects that were done before, if they recoup all this money, that would help in some way, wouldn't it?
Well, as you said, even if the government is owing you, it doesn't mean, I mean, as you said, the first principle is tailor your revenue, your expenditure to your revenue. Some of them, well, they may have a very good program, but they've gone on a very, very spending spree. Take Osun State. The governor had so many programs, some of them laudable. But then we've got to think about paying for these programs. Something must give. The finance is like the blood in our biological system. If it breaks somewhere, the whole thing will cloth. So we must also know that if the revenue, I read the report that the federal government revenue has fallen by 30% as a result of oil, something, and that the actual government allocation to states had fallen to federal about 10%. Well, if that is the case, because you get it every month, you should look at the trend and then tailor your expenditure to what you are getting.
So that's what I was going to ask you. Sorry to interrupt, Nyota. How does budgeting really work for the states? The federal government has a yearly budget. So do states. The money is coming on a monthly basis. Do they review the budget to see if this income is coming in as expected? Are we meeting our targets set for IGR? The reason I ask this is because at some point they ought to have gotten an inkling that we could be running or heading for the rocks here if we don't do something really fast.
Yeah, let's take the budget aside, the structure of the budget. One, the revenue side. The states will budget for what they're expecting from the federal allocation. And that will be informed by past allocations, what they have been getting on a monthly basis. They use that as a benchmark for projecting what they expect to get next budget year. Mm-hmm. And then they also have their performance to date, in terms of their internally generated revenue. So if states don't increase, the present situation is that most states don't generate up to even 30–25% of the total revenues. So you have two sides of the revenue, the recurrent revenue, and then you have the statutory revenue. So, and most states rely on their statutory allocation, most states. Only very, very few states have generate enough internally generated revenue.
If I will have some figures from the states, the one released by National Bureau of Statistics, where Lagos topped it. They have a figure of 276.1 billion.
Yeah.
That's as at 2014 for those states that submitted their figures to the MBS. And so Lagos, followed by Rivers. Rivers had 89.1 billion naira, Delta, Enugu, Ogun. So you have the top 5 states there. And then MBS actually says that they have 13 states who are yet to provide those details. But from all of this, yeah, just as you've spoken up, this doesn't actually match up with some of them.
Yeah, and you notice that over time, from 2013 to 2014, the internally generated revenues of the states have been declining, really. So because the state's internal revenue board will report the state of revenues almost every month, even on almost a weekly basis, to commissioners of finance or even to the governor. So we know the internal revenue board of the state will say this is what we earned last week, this is what we earned previous week, and the trend continues. So a commissioner for finance will look at the trend and advise his governor accordingly.
The question will now be, with the revenues dropping for the federal government and that of the state, even their own internally generated revenues dropping, what's the way forward? I mean, if the governors and chief executives of these states continue with their normal lifestyle, so to speak, I stand to be corrected there, but what should be done in terms of how should this state begin to seek out revenue without necessarily waiting for that allocation?
Well, if you look at the structure of our economy, the informal sector constitutes the largest proportion. Most people are self-employed. And you have to see how you can bring the self-employed people into the tax net. Most people are, in fact, 60–70% of Nigerians are in the informal economy. Only very few people are employed by government and private sector and organized sectors. But most people are in the informal economy. So if you want to increase your IGR, you have to be able to bring about policies to be able to get the informal sector into the formal sector. That is, formalize the informal sector. Get the because you have street vendors, the mobile tailor, the vulcanizer. All these people are there.
You want to begin to tax them?
No. You have to first of all you have to organize them. You've got to bring them. You've got to organize them, increase their productivity, provide vocational training with certificate of competence. And then from there, they can form and then after they complete the training and what have you, then you provide complementary services like microcredit, which will make them be able to set up their own micro enterprises and what have you. From there, they can even create jobs, employ other people, and increase their income.
All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll be back and continue our discussion, taking a look at the state's fiscal crisis. Join us again.